ABC General Hospital spoilers show that Chase always thought living with integrity would eventually pay off for him. But now, with his life feeling like it was closing in from every side, that belief seemed like nothing but a cruel joke. His time with the PCPD, which used to be such a big part of who he was now barely holding on, ready to fall apart at any second. Every conversation, every rumor, every quiet word in the hallway made him out to be someone who had crossed ethical lines, invented evidence, and put the whole department's reputation at risk. None of it was real, but people's perceptions cut deeper than the actual truth ever could. And Chase knew he was bleeding. The suspension was just the start. They took away his badge, cut his access, and his coworkers looked at him like he might just fall apart under the weight of his own lies. The irony hit hard. Chase gave up his peace of mind to keep Willow safe, convinced that she was being treated unfairly. But it turned out she was the one quietly moving the pieces on the chessboard all along, skillfully and without mercy. She hid the key on Michael's ring. She used silence like a weapon. She let him carry the truth by himself. Chase saw it too late. Willow never meant to save him. She meant to save herself. And now he was the one left standing among the ruin. The fallout didn't just stay at the precinct. It went all the way to the Quartermaine mansion. The place he had once thought would be a safe spot after marrying Brooke Lynn. The Quartermaines always put family first, and Tracy was more powerful than any decision a judge could make. As soon as she found out Chase was mixed up in the scandal with Michael's keys, her disapproval hung over him like a dark cloud that never seemed to go away. She didn't shout or blame anyone. Tracy just looked at him with that cold, calculating stare of someone already figuring out where to hide a body. And that made things even worse. Chase couldn't shake the feeling that he didn't belong like a stranger in a home weighed down by old habits, rules, and unspoken opinions. Every time the staircase creaked, it felt like a judgment was being passed. Every look from Tracy reminded him that forgiveness wasn't something owed but a favor, and he was running low on chances. But nothing hurt quite as much as Brooke Lynn. BLQ had always loved Chase with a fierce, messy, and imperfect kind of love. She stood by their marriage, stood up for him when others criticized, and trusted in his goodness even before he did. But even she had her limits. His intense need to protect Willow, to bend the rules and risk it all for her, hit a deeper, more personal nerve than Chase had any idea. It wasn't jealousy. Not exactly. It was a break of trust. A crack in loyalty. She worried that maybe her love wasn't enough to keep him steady when he needed it most. And maybe he didn't care about their future as much as she did. Chase noticed it in the way BLQ pulled away when he reached out, how her voice wavered when she tried to sound encouraging, and how her eyes held questions she was scared to speak aloud. At night, the quiet between them felt heavy and hard to bear. Like they were both waiting for the other to finally say it out loud. Their marriage was starting to fall apart. And the worst part, it's that it just keeps getting harder to fix. Chase couldn't really blame her. He could feel himself starting to break from the pressure. The PCPD didn't want him back. The Quartermaines were getting ready to push him out. He could feel his wife slipping away from him. And suddenly the world seemed too tight, too cold, and too heavy for him to take a breath. That's when the thought started soft and faint at first, then grew louder until I couldn't ignore it. He could just walk away. Seattle is a city known for its rainy weather and beautiful views of Puget Sound. It's got a strong coffee culture, plenty of green spaces, and a mix of modern and historic neighborhoods. People often think of the Space Needle and Pike Place Market when they hear Seattle, but it's also a hub for tech companies and outdoor activities. Finn. A fresh start. There was a time in his life when he could have just walked away from Port Charles before the city broke what little he had left inside. In Seattle, he wouldn't be known as the detective accused of making up evidence. He wouldn't be the man Tracy put up with. He wasn't the kind of husband to let Brooke Lynn down. He would just be Chase, maybe damaged, but broken things can be fixed. Maybe even rebuilt. But leaving would mean leaving BLQ behind unless she decided to go with him. And what if she didn't? What if leaving Port Charles meant leaving behind the life they had made together, the sound of her voice like music, and the way she looked at him like he could do anything? Fear gripped his chest so tightly that it felt like he couldn't catch a single breath. General Hospital was really pushing him further than he had ever been before. Every story, every charge, every outcome felt like it was pushing him toward a moment where he had to face the truth. Chase wasn't just losing control. He was being pushed into a spot where his only options were to change or to break. And then, in what felt like a final harsh blow, Willow pulled away completely. She didn't need him anymore, stopped pretending to share her thoughts, and no longer leaned on his loyalty like a shield. She brushed him off with a calm, deliberate coldness, leaving him to deal with the consequences of what she decided. Chase used to think he was the one saving her, but now he saw how things really were. She had just used him to climb up. And now she was walking away. He felt the realization hit him hard, almost like it was a punch to the gut. His life wasn't just spinning out of control. It was coming apart bit by bit. His badge, his home, his marriage, his sense of purpose, his mistaken beliefs about Willow's innocence. Everything around him was falling apart, and all he could ask himself was one thing. Would he stick around in Port Charles and take on a fight that he might have already lost, or would he just leave before the town took what little was left of him? Either way, the man who came out of that tough situation wouldn't be the same person. Chase had to face every weakness, every fear, and every truth he had been avoiding. And as everything settled heavy on his shoulders, he realized something chilling. This was more than just a storyline. This was the moment Chase's destiny changed forever. Willow had been stuck for weeks in a growing mess of fear, lies, and political pressure, each part carefully woven by Sidwell with cold control. He had slowly shaped her, guided her steps, and nudged her toward choices where the line between just getting by and crossing a moral line wasn't clear anymore. As soon as Willow felt like she couldn't catch her breath under his hold, she did the one thing she thought might get her out of it. She admitted the truth. She told it all. The key that was planted. The control? They tried to pin something on Michael when the real story got too risky to face. The subtle sabotage that slowly led to Drew's downfall. She told the whole truth in a shaky voice, hoping that by laying bare her mistakes, she could break Sidwell's grip and stop herself from being a pawn in his ruthless climb to power. But Willow didn't realize just how much saying the truth would cost her. Once the truth came out, it took on a life of its own. She wasn't the only one who knew. Wiley, with her bright eyes and quiet watchfulness and that innocent way about her, had somehow turned into the last small break in the shield she wore. In a quiet voice, he told what he saw on the stairs, and it hit the courtroom hard. I saw Mommy with Daddy's key. That simple sentence, said with the innocence of a child who didn't grasp the consequences, blew apart the lie she had been holding on to. It wasn't Sidwell who broke her first. It was her very own son. And Willow, who was already fragile, suddenly felt the ground give way beneath her. But destruction usually doesn't end with just the first hit. To get out of this mess, Willow didn't just need the truth, she needed someone to blame. And she did have one. What do you mean by Chase? Could you give me more details? The man who had believed in her. She believed her. She kept her safe. She let the man take the fall for a crime she had planned. In her desperation, Willow made that loyalty her last weapon. She had the same shaky vulnerability she used before to pull Chase close, but now she used it to drag him under the water. She kept saying that Chase only acted alone, that he took her doubts way too far, that he made the choice to steal Michael's key, that he made things worse, and that he risked the whole investigation. She betrayed him quickly without any mess, and it hurt deeply. And Chase had no idea it was about to happen. Willow confessed to everything all at once. Next, she made sure Chase took full responsibility for what happened. For the PCPD, that was the last confirmation they needed. For the Quartermaines, it showed he wasn't loyal. For Brooklyn, it was the emotional shattering she was scared of but never said out loud. For Chase, that was the moment everything around him just stopped. He gave up everything just to keep her safe. And she got back at him by destroying the last bits of his reputation. The fallout spread quicker than he could keep up with. Sidwell just washed his hands of the whole thing, acting like he didn't know anything. The public quickly turned against Chase without mercy. The PCPD got its dismissal papers ready. Tracy insisted that he be taken off the Quartermaine estate. Even Finn calling from Seattle. You could hear the tiredness in Chase's voice. The kind of quiet giving up you get when someone doesn't feel like they know their own life anymore. And the fans watching from the sidelines could clearly see how things were about to unfold. This wasn't just a plot twist. This was more than just drama. It felt like a goodbye. Josh Swickard leaving, which used to be just a rumor, now felt like a steady beat running through the whole story. Chase's downfall was laid out with harsh clarity, feeling so complete and final that it seemed like there was no coming back, that it was just the end of the character's story. GH wasn't just pushing him into a tight spot, they were setting things up for him to leave Port Charles broken, holding onto the fragments of a life ruined by misplaced trust and love turned against him. Willow might have broken free from Sidwell's hold, but she did it at the cost of the one person who believed in her no matter what. As she saw Chase break down from accusations she knew weren't fair, a fresh fear grew inside her, understanding that her own freedom had cost someone else's future. A future GH could end up being written without the show completely. Chase's story wasn't just coming apart. It crumbled noisy, sad, and something that couldn't be undone. And if he left Port Charles, it wouldn't really seem like he had a choice. It would feel like the fallout from Willow's last unforgivable betrayal. Nathan and Dante stood amid the ruins of a department that used to be known for discipline, loyalty, and an unspoken code of honor. Chase didn't mean to cause chaos. It came from a place of desperation. Still, the damage was very real. Files got compromised, trust took a hit, and the public's faith in the PCPD broke down, shaking everyone all over Port Charles. What used to be a unified force now felt torn apart by scandal, political pressure, and the constant worry that no one really knew how far the corruption ran. Nathan, who had come back after everyone thought he was gone now, stood as someone both respected and doubted, fully aware of how much this moment meant. Dante, who had led the department through crisis after crisis, could feel the weariness deep in his bones, but still, his determination kept him moving forward. They both understood that their job wasn't just about fixing protocols or bringing back order. It was about piecing back the very heart of the PCPD. But as they started the slow work, they found out that the truth about Chase was tangled much deeper than they thought. Clues pointed to missing timestamps, changed testimony, and a string of manipulations that made it seem like Chase had been pushed, maybe even trapped by things beyond his control. Willow's confession set off the first blast, but the ripples from her betrayal went way beyond that. Sidwell's political moves and Cullum's unpredictable violence had become a big part of why the department fell apart, turning Chase from just one weak spot into a clear sign that the whole system was quietly falling apart. As Nathan and Dante learned more, it became clear that Chase wasn't the only one responsible, he was just the easiest target to blame. They spent countless late nights sifting through files full of misinformation, and Dante felt his trust in the institution flicker like a dying flame. Nathan, trying to find his footing after getting his life back and figuring out his purpose again, couldn't shake a darker truth pulling at him. The PCPD had been compromised well before Chase messed up so badly. But the town wasn't interested in any of the details. It just cared about the results. Now Nathan and Dante had to bring salvation. With each choice they took and every fix they tried, it felt like they were running faster just to keep ahead of growing doubt. Officers leaned close in quiet corners, unsure if loyalty was about honesty or just blindly following orders. Citizens were asking questions, but the PCPD wasn't prepared to respond. And through everything, the shadow of Chase's downfall hung over every conversation. Nathan, who had patiently guided Chase before and felt a real sense of pride in him, couldn't get rid of the bitter mix of betrayal and pity in his mind. Dante, who had stood by Chase through so many cases, felt the sharp sting of betrayal from someone he thought of as a brother-in-arms. Still, neither of them could quite bring themselves to fully condemn him, especially when so many clues hinted at a bigger conspiracy. Still, the job was clear: they needed to rebuild no matter who was at fault. So they started making changes, making evidence rules stricter, looking again at how officers were held responsible, and shaking up how investigations were supervised. But the harder they worked to fix things, the more the system seemed to push back. The PCPD pulled back from any effort to fix things, almost like a hurt animal trying to protect itself. Below the surface of their progress, another storm was quietly gathering. The truth, harsh and hard to face, seemed to be slipping further out of reach. Each new discovery made it harder to tell who was really responsible. Every witness said something different from the one before. Each link pointed to a deeper trouble creeping into the department well before Chase was blamed. Nathan and Dante weren't just putting things back in order anymore. They were tugging at threads that could tear apart the whole foundation of justice in Port Charles. The more they tried to control the story, the worse things got. Every time they fixed a protocol, another bit of hidden corruption showed up. Every time they calmed one officer down, another group quietly started to rebel. Every time they found one truth, another one slipped away, lost in the shadows created by Sidwell's ambition and Willow's lies. By the time Dante understood how big this was, the change had already started, an institutional shift strong enough to change the future of law enforcement in Port Charles. And Nathan, always standing up for what's right, knew they weren't just dealing with the mess left by Chase's breakdown anymore. They were getting ready for a war against forces that had been tightening their grip on the city long before any of them noticed the signs. In the end, bringing back the PCPD didn't mean things were back to normal. It sparked something unstable, something that could change everything. And something risky. Nathan and Dante stood right in the middle of it all, feeling the truth slipping further away. It was like a new reality was taking over, one where nothing felt certain and every choice seemed to hold the fate of a city hanging by a thread. The explosion was just starting.